Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the Banquet Hall Podcast. As always, my name is Kyler Nathan. I am your host. If this is your first time listening to the podcast or watching, if you're checking us out on YouTube, make sure you follow the podcast at Banquet Hall Pod and share it with a friend because the content that we're discussing today is relevant to any and everyone, especially with the holidays right around the corner. We want to make sure we get this content out to you all. I'm joined by two amazing individuals, Monique and Jessica. Monique, Jessica, how are y'all doing today?
Awesome. Glad to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you for asking.
Of course. Thankful to have you all on the podcast. The reason that we're gathered here today, because some of y'all might have already watched Monique's episode. If you haven't, go ahead and check that out or save it to your watch later. But last episode, Monique and I had a conversation about mental health in general, about the mental health field, about maximizing therapy. And within that conversation, Monique mentioned that Kaiser's mental health workers are currently on strike. As of recording this episode, we're recording on Thursday, December 5th. It's week 7 of an open-ended strike. And I wanted to invite Jessica and Monique, if y'all can talk to us a little bit about what is the purpose of an open-ended strike in general, and maybe just a little bit about what is going on with this Kaiser strike, if either you want to start with that.
Monique, you want me to go?
Jessica, I'll let you take the lead.
Okay. So I personally, I've been with Kaiser for a little over 8.5 years or so. And this is my third strike, unfortunately, with Kaiser. The first 2 were time limited. So we did like a 3-day strike. We did a 5-day strike. And we have found that time limited strikes do not work. They know we're going out. They know when we're coming back, and they just wait for that, and nothing changes. So this time, we really put that vote in with our members to see kind of, what are our issues that we want to get, tackled, that we want to be in our contract? What do we want to fight for? What are we willing to do to fight for that? And they literally said, we'll do whatever it takes up to an open-ended strike. And we also have seen within the last few years, the same people as us, but in so it's our counterparts up in Northern California and then Hawaii have done open-ended strikes. And they've been long, but they have shown to, push Kaiser's back to the bargaining table, and they've won what they wanted. So there's more victory in the open-ended, unfortunately, for all of our pockets.
Yes, and to my understanding, Jessica, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we've been actively bargaining since July of this year, and we wanted to start back in April, and I'm fairly new to Kaiser. I started only in February. So I remember coming in, doing my interview, and it seemed like, oh, okay, there's something kind of off. I don't know just what. And I remember on my first day of orientation, our union rep came in and discussed with us what was going on, and that we would potentially be going into a strike, asking for the contract that we're currently asking for, which we'll get into. And that was in February. So it definitely has been a very long and ongoing discussion. And we wanted to start bargaining back in April since our contract did expire on September 30th. But here we go.
You are absolutely right. Yes.
Yeah. And I did mention some of the things that we were asking for, and definitely number one, patient care, where we do work, most of us, 4 10s. So 4 days, 10-hour shifts. And on an average day, we're seeing about 9 patients. We get 1 hour of patient management time. And patient management time includes if we need to make child abuse reports or elder abuse reports, to call the protective services, write the reports, also complete our notes, look into resources for our clients, because sometimes we don't have the opportunity to do so in sessions. And what else, Jessica, would you say that we use our patient management time for? There's so many things.
You're hitting all those things. Yeah. So it is that time, like you said, Monique, that we need to do quality care. Kaiser has gone to the system of assembly line care, right? And so these patients are coming through literally on a conveyor belt. We don't have time to even go to the restroom sometimes or get some water in between, because we also have to return patient emails, patient phone calls. There's, crisis stuff going off in between sessions. So there's so much stuff that we need to do, that vital time that we need to provide that, again, quality care that Kaiser doesn't care about. So yeah, you're right. Or even consult with like other treatment team members. If we have patients that we might be doing therapy with, but they're in another group, or they have medications with with a psychiatrist. We don't have time to do any of that. So it's really sad that these Kaiser's treating these patients like they're numbers. But they're individuals, they're people, and they deserve that quality care. But we just don't have time. So.
Yes, I know, like how you mentioned, even with something as small as like the bathroom breaks, since being on strike, we've had the opportunity to really get to know our colleagues and hear the
Yes.
stories. And I think one of the most like profound stories that really stuck out to me, and then not hearing it once, not hearing it twice, but several times, where some of the people have mentioned like having to wear adult diapers because they don't have the opportunity to go to the bathroom. So just in case, like, oh, I have an accident, I don't have to worry that I wet myself. And I'm like,
Yes.
oh, yeah, that's intense. And it kind of sums up the work conditions that we're on the receiving end as therapists. And like in previous episode, we talked about ensuring that people take care of themselves. Also, as being a care provider, it's important that we get taken care of, because we can't show up for our patients and clients if we're not showing up for ourselves.
Absolutely. And that's a health hazard that we're causing, or making people hold their bladders that long, or just sit in their soiled like adult diapers. And the just so too, the program Monique's specifically talking about it's a program called ADAPT. So this came out of, it's a virtual program that it's to help with their assembly line, right? So these therapists, they're virtual. They see double the amount of patients that we see in a day. So because their appointments are only 30 minutes long. So talk about back to back. They're seeing sometimes up to 16 patients a day. Wow. And literally don't have time to do basic, like bio breaks. So it's ridiculous. We brought that up in bargaining. I am part of the bargaining committee, so I've been there from the start of this. They don't care. They don't even flinch when they hear that kind of stuff, because they don't care. It's an economic issue to them.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of comments. This works for us.
Yeah, it works for them, right? Their pocketbooks. Sure.
I mean, even in preparation, knowing that I was going to have this conversation with y'all, it's still just shocking to hear you both explain it from that experience. Because as Monique alluded to last episode, we were talking about how we want mental health workers, caretakers, I want all people to just have like fulfilled, holistic lives, of course. But if someone is working so intently and intentionally on another person's mental health, that person also needs to have a space to take care of themselves. And as a person with a full-time job, I do less than you all do in terms of people interactions at that scale. And I still need my 15-minute break. I need my walk. I need to go to the bathroom. I need to take time to process what just happened. I need time to research what I need to do, because we're all humans at the end of the day. And I love what you said about just that human element, and trying not to see these patients as just numbers, as not just profit, because these are all human beings. And with the field like mental health, if you're being treated like a number on either end of that table, it's not good for anyone's mental health.
Absolutely not. Yes. Thank you for saying that and repeating that, because it's true. It's true. Our patients feel it. They know when they're being rushed out of the room, or, we don't have the time or the space to really give them that quality care. They know. We as members or patients ourselves, when we go to the doctor, we can tell when we're being kind of rushed out of the room too. So it's important, to hire on more staff, give us this time that we're asking for. And I wanted to mention too, I don't know if you mentioned this before, Monique, but Monique talked about numbers, right? So as far as this time management that she's talking about in Northern California, again, I keep going back to that, but they do the same job that we do down here in SoCal. They were able to fight in their contract and win 7 hours of protected time a week, just to do these things outside of the therapy room that needs to be done. Monique said that we have one, every service area is kind of different. We start out with 4, but 2 of which, if we have anything that's out of our control, so like a patient canceled or they no-showed an appointment, right? Because stuff happens, but we can't control that. Management books into that. So we're left with, like Monique said, the 2 or 1 hours a week to do all these things. So we're not asking for anything more. They already given this time to our other, providers up in NorCal. So why can't we have the same down here? We do the same exact thing. So our our platform is all about equity, right? Equity for our patients, equity for ourselves as far as like workload, equity in wages and pension and all that other stuff too. But we're just asking for the same. We're not asking for anything else they haven't already given. And that is what just irks me.
Yes. And I think to add to that, Jessica, and even how you mentioned like our platform being equity, where there are so many things that our counterparts in Northern California have that we don't have yet. I think the biggest insult for me personally has been like the media lies, where Jessica mentioned Northern California currently has 7 hours of protected time to be able to do client care related work. We're asking for the same. However, in media, we've seen that we're asking for 50% of our work week to be direct care only and the other 50% to be the patient management time. And we're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
20
the
hours
math is not math.
7 is very different.
Yeah.
So I think that has been something that's been very disheartening. And especially when Kaiser has the funds and they have the reach to be able to put out LA Times ads where everyone reads LA Times. Yep. And we don't have the same funds. And I think that as I process the things that have been going on throughout the last 7 weeks, I'm like, oh, this is a long-term game where they know that us as little people, where we're working parents and grandparents, and we don't have the funds that they have. So it's just, okay, we're going to play the long game and see how long can we wait y'all out and how many people need to go back to work or can't come out to begin with. But we have billions of dollars to expend.
Yes. Did you guys talk about last time what Kaiser has as far as reserves, money in reserves? Okay, so Kaiser has billions of dollars in reserves, right? So this is money that they have to utilize to improve stuff like this, patient care, or just their lives, or of their workforce, right? To treat their employees good. And so, but they keep saying at the bargaining table, they kept saying, no, this is an economic issue. But like Monique said, they have no issue throwing down lies in the LA Times or in this article, this place. They're spending thousands and thousands of dollars on these just blatant lies. The other thing too, is they're bringing in scabs. So these are people that are, they're providers like Monique and myself, but they are they're coming on to fill in for us, getting paid $13,000 a week, as well as food, housing, transportation, all of that to fill in for us. Yet we're finding out from, our colleagues on the inside, they're not doing anything. They're calling our patients for like 4 minutes, 5 minutes, just to see if they're like still alive, like, right? Or you okay? Okay, good. They're not doing anything and they're getting paid this money. So don't tell us it's an economic issue when you are just throwing money up in the air and wasting,
Yes, yeah, I did the math. I have time where I was like, I did the math where one of the things that we did mention in bargaining was that it would be about $2,000 a year per employee to be able to give us one of the things that we're asking for, which is a pension. And that was one thing I was hoping we could clear up too, opposed to currently to date, if someone started week 1 as a registry therapist or scab, if they would have stayed from week 1 till week 7, $91,000. So you're going to invest $2,000 for your long-term employees versus $91,000 for a temp employee to date.
Yep. They literally cut off their nose to spite their face. It's disgusting. But they want to hold us out, like you said. I don't know if it's like a pride thing or what it is, because there's 2,400 of us, right, in our bargaining unit. That's it. 2,400 people. I think 1,700 of us are the ones that don't have the pension, right, which is our that defined pension plan, which we're fighting for. Just a little history on that. So back in 2014, Kaiser, when we were bargaining over a contract, they came to the table and said they were going to be eliminating the pension plan for everybody, right? So it was not just for our bargaining unit, but for everybody in Kaiser. We fought against that, and we struck a deal or whatever where everybody who was hired on, I want to say like January 2015 and prior to that, got to keep they were like kind of grandfathered in and got to keep their pension. Everybody hired January 2015 forward has no pension. We have like a retirement plan, but that fluctuates. That's not the same thing. And so we're out there fighting to get that reinstated because, again, there's 1,700 of us. Every other employee at Kaiser has a pension. I'm talking, and I'm not degrading anybody. Everyone deserves that, right? But I'm talking housekeeping, our clerks, and we have gone to school and for these degrees that we have, and we're paying, school loans forever on these things, but we don't have a pension. Why? And they have no answer for us. No answer. So,
like you said, it goes back to an equity issue. Monique and I discussed a bit about just what it takes to get to this position that y'all are at as licensed clinical workers when it comes to the unpaid labor that you've done, the hours of schooling, the reading, everything that goes into this profession. And like you said, no matter what level you are, like at Kaiser, like you deserve that pension plan. And if 100%. If I can underline further, if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned y'all aren't trying to do something brand new. Like there's other unions who are advocating for the same thing. Those negotiations have come and gone. You're just trying to get equity across the board.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. We're not asking for, they want to frame us that we are greedy, that we're just asking for the world. No, just bring us up to par. And the other thing too is that our union had a 5-year wait, or it was like a 5-year freeze on raises, right? So we're actually not even, when we get caught up, we're not even, it's literally that. It's going to be getting caught up to like what, it is to live, currently, as far as like what it costs to live. So we're not asking for a lot. We're just asking for you to bring us up to par with what you pay everybody else in our profession. That's it.
And I think another one of like the media half truths was that we make 18% more than our colleagues in the field. And while it may be true that Kaiser does pay very well, and I know Jessica, in a different podcast that you mentioned, Kaiser used to be called the Golden Handcuffs, where we are taken care of. However, when we look across the board in other people within Kaiser network, we're underpaid.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. When everybody who I've spoken to who left their previous job and has come on to Kaiser was so excited to come here, right? Because it was like, okay, I'm going to go to this place. It's a great company and I'm going to retire there. And because they pay well, their benefits are great, all that. And that's not what it is anymore. It's really, it's kind of like, why am I still here? You're abusing us. And we're not even paying us correctly to do that. So you're right, Monique, you're right.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of pride in the work that we do and even the company that we work for, because there's so many good things about Kaiser, so many things that we put in to get here. And I know we love our patients. We love the work that we do. We just want better conditions for ourselves and for our patients.
Yes.
I think that's what's getting lost in a lot of the messages where people have been hearing and receiving. I've heard several people, even people that we work with, that have said that the contract is greedy or we're asking for too much. And it's like, no, we're asking for the same things that our counterparts have up north and in Hawaii.
Yep. Yeah. I think too, it's a lot of people lump us in because when you think about it, like Boeing or the longshoremen or whoever else, right? When they fight for their contracts, they might be fighting for like, to improve like working conditions or whatever, but a lot of times they're fighting for those wage increases, right? Or benefits or their retirement. We're fighting for those things too, but the other piece of that people kind of leave out of the equation is that to improve patient care. That is our number one thing. If you ask anybody on the picket line, they will tell you we're fighting to improve that care for our patients. That's number one for us, right? But a lot of other companies or groups that go out on strike, they don't have that component. And so I feel like a lot of times in the media, we get lumped in with that. And we are considered greedy, right? Because you're just wanting to get paid more or whatever. Yeah, but we also care about our patients. And so I wish people understood that, like why we're actually out, fighting. It's important.
Absolutely. And you both have alluded to the fact that we're also talking about this major corporation that's pockets aren't hurting. Like they have money to blow, they have money to spend. And when it comes to folks advocating for pay increases, better working conditions, this is something we should want for everybody. Like we could have this conversation
Yes.
with every field. We want humans to be able to live peacefully, get the care that they need, and be taken care of accordingly. And I think I wanted to take a quick step back just a bit because obviously we're involved in spaces that have unions, but for listeners who don't even know what a union is or why unions are important, because I think people talk around them with all the strikes that have happened over the past few years. We've heard a lot more about unions, but I want to take a step back and just from y'all's individual perspective, why is a union important? What does a union exist for?
You want to go, Monique?
Yes, so this is
Okay.
actually my second job working in a union. And the first time I worked in a job that had a union, I think I started at like age 17. And I remember being so upset, like, why do I have to pay union dues? I'm just giving people money for free. And someone explained to me, they're like, no, you're really ensuring yourself by being in a union. You have job protections, you have people advocating for you. And I've also been in the spaces where I've worked in nonprofit where there is no union. All you have is HR. And unfortunately, a lot of times human resources is for the company. So if
Yep.
something happens, and a lot of times there's misunderstandings in the work that we do because we're doing one-on-one work, we don't have people overseeing us so much. So what happens when there is a misunderstanding and you need someone to advocate for you, especially when you're on the tail end of or receiving end of ridicule or discipline? We're human. We get frazzled, we get emotional. So who steps in and advocates for us if we don't have the sense of agency to advocate for ourselves? So that is one of the main purposes of having a union, to be able to have advocacy, and whether that be if there is a disciplinary action or if there's unfair labor practices or if we're looking to incorporate new things in the field, that it gives us a voice essentially.
Absolutely. I can totally echo that. It is protection for sure. A lot of people too think that like the union is this, it's like the Wizard of Oz, right? It's like this imaginary entity that's out there. No, we are the union, right? All of our members are the union. Because yes, we have union stewards, right? Or we have the bargaining team that I talked about, or union reps, but ultimately we vote and decide as a group what we want. And so we are, specifically with our union, NUHW, we are member led, right? Everything we do is member led, member voted on. And so, but it's our colleagues coming together and supporting each other. And we're able to have that protection to stand up for ourselves, you know, as a workforce, and our patients. Again, I'm going back to that patient thing, but that's huge too, right? It's also a platform for us as well to reach out to get, you know, political allies involved or community allies involved as well, to get these issues and these messages out there, which has been helpful too. We've been having you know, political allies sign on to letters and stuff to send to the CEO of Kaiser, like, you need to get your life together, Greg Adams, right? Like, you need to come to the table with these people and make a deal, because this is ridiculous. So, but that is a huge platform as well, and I think that that is so important. So I think everybody should unionize and should have that protection.
And in terms of the day to day of the strike, obviously, like I mentioned, there's been plenty of strikes in the media over the last few years, whether you go into the entertainment industry, healthcare industry, aircraft pilots. There's been so many different strikes in our media. And I think a lot of folks have driven by strikes. They've seen the signs, they've seen people chanting, people honk their horns. But what is it like actually being there on the front lines? Especially we're in the holiday season. We mentioned people have families, people have kids. People are trying to find a way to continue to make their own ends meet in the midst of all of this. So, what can y'all share about just what is that day in the life like on the strike line?
It's not glamorous, right? Or sometimes when I get home, I'm like, what did you do out there today? You look like you're camping, right? But we're out there. We are in the sun every single day, right? It's dirty out there, but we are standing together we have a crew that kind of comes up in the morning, sets up tables, sets up snacks and coffee for us just to kind of sustain ourselves, right? But and then we have our music going, we have our picket signs out there, and then we do like we put together activities and stuff just to kind of, like Monique said, we come together. And it sucks that it's taken this type of thing to happen, but I feel like we have bonded so much in all of this, which has been great too. But we're out there, we're marching through the medical centers, right? We are the community's driving by and honking for us, or the other thing, they're yelling at us like, go back to work, or flipping us off or whatever. So there's the negative side too. Same, we've had some negative reactions from some of the physicians at Kaiser flipping us off, telling us we should be ashamed of ourselves. We've had issues with security guards blocking us out, putting up literal like barriers to not let us in when we have the legal right to do that. So yeah, it's not glamorous, but we do it, and I have fun out there. I don't know. What do you think, Monique?
Yeah, I think it's like a conglomerate of emotions.
Yes.
Where I think the first couple weeks, like one of our chants is like, we're fired up, we can't take it anymore. Where it was like the first couple weeks, I'm like, yeah, I'm fired up, I'm ready to fight. And like the last couple weeks, I'm like, I'm exhausted, I'm ready for this to be over. It's definitely a whirlwind of emotions, but one of the things that I can say is definitely rewarding is having such a wonderful support system, being able to get to know people that are on the front lines with us and that we're fighting for the same thing and having similar mindsets and just being able to share stories and experiences. It's definitely something hard to put into words.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're absolutely right. The emotions are everywhere. There's the stress, the unknown. We don't know how long this is going to go on. We don't know where our next, dollar's coming from, at this point. So it is extremely stressful. We're rolling into the holidays too, where that's already a financial crunch for a lot of people, but there's us not being paid now for 7 weeks so far on top of this with no end in sight. It's extremely stressful. So we're going through this, we're all riding this roller coaster together. Thank God. It's scary. But it's important. It's needed, unfortunately.
Yeah. A question I've had to continually ask myself is like, okay, or like, what are you fighting for? And hold on to that. And remember, this is something that's bigger than you. And yes, it's going to benefit us. And more importantly, it's going to benefit the people that we sought out to help when we decided to do the work that we're doing. Yeah. So like, I remember the first couple of weeks, I kept telling the first couple of weeks before the strike, I kept telling my patients, a word that we talk about a lot in therapy is advocacy. And what kind of advocate would I be if I told you, advocate for yourself, stand up for yourself, fight for your kids, speak up. And I didn't do that for you all.
Absolutely. I think too that a lot of people say, or the scabs will say, I'm coming in to help these patients, and you guys are abandoning your patients. This does suck. You don't think we don't feel guilt for not being there with our patients every single day, or that how many appointments have been canceled as a result of the strike. However, we chose to do this rather than continue status quo because what they're already receiving is crap. Right, as far as care, as far as the time that they need, from us. So it's short pain, hopefully for long-term gain. But bottom line, we do care about our patients, and that's BS. If anybody wants to say it, otherwise. Sorry.
Oh no, you don't have to apologize whatsoever. We've said worse things on the banquet hall. But no, I definitely appreciate just that personal anecdote about what it's like being out there because, like I mentioned, some folks drive by, they see people chanting, they see people together. Some people might go the extra step to figure out why they're out there. Some people just drive by and they just see people with shirts and signs and never think twice about it. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we left some space for was to talk about support, whether there's folks that are just in their cars driving by and wondering what they can do to support. I know in my experience with strikes, sometimes support can look as little as like sharing a message, sharing a post on social media, but also it could go as far as bringing a case of water to the strikers and bringing like support. So, from y'all's perspective, how can folks listening to this episode support what you all are doing out there and amplify your message?
I think that you brought up two really great ideas, and being able to share social media posts when share a social media post when you see them, reshare, like, comment, get the engagement going on social media. And then also too, if you can find out where there's a local picket line, they're all across SoCal, different days depending on location. You can bring water, snacks, and then we do have a hardship fund. It's a GoFundMe link that I will send to you to put in the description. And the hardship fund goes directly towards our therapists and ensuring that they're taken care of to help provide financial support.
Yeah. Also, we've had our patients have been amazing, right? It's yes, they are hurting. Their appointments have been canceled. But a lot of them are choosing when Kaiser calls to offer them a new therapist every, fill-in therapist every 2 weeks or whatever. A lot of our patients are saying, heck no, like I'm just gonna wait for my therapist to come back, right? Because I don't want to start all over again with somebody else who doesn't care. I want my therapist. So we've had patients go and do TikTok videos for their therapists, right? We've had patients come out to the strike lines and actually speak up at our rallies and share their stories. There's also a website called Kaiser Don't Deny .org, and you can go there if you've been affected by Kaiser's crappy system. You can go there and share your story too. If you are being affected currently, or your appointments have been canceled, or just your Kaiser has not been treating you well, because these are still Kaiser's patients. They're supposed to be still providing this care, right, to these patients, and it's not happening. So if you have been canceled on or are not receiving care during this time, you can file a complaint as well with the Department of Managed Healthcare. And those are coming in like hotcakes, and Kaiser's getting in trouble for that. So, but don't hide, speak up, because this is what we're fighting for. So.
Thank you. And I'll definitely make sure that those links are well displayed for the video podcast as well as in the description. Make sure if y'all are listening to this episode to go ahead and share the link to this episode with somebody so that they can learn more in depth about what's going on. You both have been so gracious with your time and sharing your stories, your testimonies about what's going on out there. I definitely feel more informed myself, even as someone who had the precursor preparing for this episode. I definitely just felt like I learned a lot in hearing y'all's stories. Before I let you both go, though, I thought we can spend some time leaving the audience, the listeners, with some tips just navigating this time of the year in general. Don't want to take for granted having two mental health professionals on the podcast without being able to give some tips and tricks to our listeners, especially as we mentioned, we're going into the holiday season. You all are trying to take care of yourselves out there on the picket lines, and I'm sure you all have some tips for folks trying to take care of themselves at home. So as folks know, the holidays are traditionally supposed to be a very festive, a very merry time. But for some others, they might be dealing with grief. They might be dealing with loneliness. What advice or what are some things that you might say to someone who is struggling with that loneliness, struggling with grief, but may not feel comfortable discussing it because it's the holidays and they don't want to be a Debbie Downer. They don't want to bring the time of year down. I know we've heard a lot of these stigmas along with mental health. So what type of advice would you give someone in a similar situation to that? Big question, I know.
No, I just thank you for saying that. It's important for people to know, meet yourself where you're at, right? You don't need to put on a facade for anybody else. Thanksgiving just passed, right? And I was supposed to go with my family. I didn't go, right? Because I wasn't feeling it. I needed space to be by myself. And I stayed home with my dog and put my Christmas tree up or whatever. And I was 100% fine with that. I protected myself. I probably protected them from negative me, in that moment where I was. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? So, that it doesn't need to be a stigma. Meet yourself where you're at and let yourself be in the space. You don't have to be, life is not like the commercials or the ads or the movies that we see as far as the holidays. it's not jolly for everyone, and there's nothing wrong with that. So just be real with, with yourself. I think that's number one for me, for people to know. I don't know.
Yes. Jessica, you took the words out of my mouth, and like
Sorry.
it's okay. Being able to like enjoy things on your own terms and set those boundaries with yourself and reminding yourself, no is a full sentence. It's okay to be able to say no and protect yourself. And the other thing too, for people on the opposite side, respecting differences, where we're going to have different perspectives, we're going to have different feelings about the holidays and how people may approach them, how they feel about them. How do we cultivate an experience of asking questions and supporting each other and respecting differences ultimately?
Yeah. I love that. I think also too, like, don't go into debt. Don't go into debt financially, but also like emotionally, right? Give what you can. But remember what the holiday time is about for you. Don't feel like you have to go all out, especially if you don't have, funds or time or whatever, the energy. So don't go into debt kind of all around, on all those levels that I talked about. I don't know. That's important to me.
And I think that goes into like one of my favorite things to say when I start therapy with anyone, where it's like, regardless of what we're coming in for, let's talk about routine maintenance. And where are you filling up your cup? Where are you being depleted? And how do you ensure that you're taking care of the basics, especially if there are challenges with grief and loneliness? Are we sleeping? Are we eating? Are we taking care of showers and basic hygiene? Start with the basics. Even if it feels like it's something that's so big, start there.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, just approaching it very piecemeal, just focusing on things that you can control. But I do want to push a little bit further with one of the pieces of advice that you all shared with regards to no being a complete sentence. What would you share with somebody who they hear that and they're like, yeah, but grandma called me like 5 times. She wondering if I'm gonna come home. I feel bad to tell her no, because I know some people have complicated relationships with family members, loved ones. They may not feel comfortable choosing themselves over the holiday tradition, the holiday spirit. Like, oh, you're gonna miss like my turkey, you're gonna miss my ham. And it's like, yeah, but I need rest. How do folks navigate that?
I think the first thing that comes to mind, I don't remember if I said this last episode, but learning the difference between setting boundaries and setting rules. Where a
Mm,
lot of times people say, like, well, I set the boundary. It's like, no, 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 you set a rule. A boundary doesn't require anything of anyone else. So even if there are those complex relationships and dynamics with family members, it's like kind of like a if then statement where, hey, I understand that spending time is really important to you. It's also important to me. And I also need time with myself. If you continue to call me, then I'm not going to answer. I need space for me.
Yeah,
So it
I love
doesn't
that.
require you to stop calling me. It's just if you do this, this is how I'm going to respond. And that's how I'm setting the boundary to protect myself and protect my peace so that I can show up in the relationship wholesomely when I'm ready to engage. And let's have a talk about respecting space. And why is that hard for you?
Yes, I love that. For the people though that hear that and still say like, no, but I have to go, right? Because I think sometimes even I'm one of those. But then go, but give what you can and make it,
mm,
you don't have to go all day or all weekend or whatever. Just go for a few hours, right? And you can still set those, boundaries, but just have it be time limited, right? But make it work for you. And continue to check in with yourself. That's huge, right?
Yeah, because definitely holidays aren't a one size fits all, and it's hard to navigate. And like Jessica said, taking it a day at a time and doing what works for you, and having those open discussions as much as possible, so that people can know where you are, and trying to keep the communication open with the people that you
Yes.
care about. And definitely, if it feels heavy and it's like, even if family dynamics aren't really the challenge, but just like how Kyler mentioned with the loneliness or the grief, reach out. Even when it feels hard, reach out for support, the people that you know care about you. And if you have someone on the receiving end of like, oh, I don't know how to support my friend that's grieving through the holidays, and it feels like too much to ask, or I don't want to add to their mental load, do things that you know are important to them, even if it's something small, by calling them.
Yes. Yes. Even, yeah, you're right. Even a text message or a check or a call, they're still going to remember, even if you don't answer or you don't respond, that person that's receiving that still going to know that that person tried and was there for me, and that person cares, and I am not alone. I might be choosing to be in a space by myself by not responding, but I know I do have options. So yeah, please reach out. Please reach out.
Something that I've been leaning into just in my own friend circles. I'll just be very transparent. In the text message, I'll say, hey, I just thinking about you. You're on my mind. Just wanted to check on you. Been worried about you. Whatever it may be, just being transparent. Like, I just thought about you, want to text you. Because I feel like in this society that we live in with the TikTok generation, with capitalism, there's always this feeling of like, oh, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to take people's time, or I don't want to come off as too clingy or too pushy. But I feel like it's very human to have concern for our friends, the people that we care about, even people that we don't know, that just that general human empathy. And I think the more that we take our pride out of it and just lean into like, hey, I'm just checking on my fellow human being, just want to make sure you're good.
Absolutely. I think too, when people take it a step farther, and I don't mean to get dark with this, but like, what's the first thing people say when a loved one passes away, right? Like they're survivors. Dang it, I should have reached out more, or I should have done X, Y, and Z. Do it now, right? I'm not saying everyone's in that space, but I'm just saying, like, just do it. Send it. We're always on our phone, right? Send a quick text to somebody. Just check in. Do it now.
Do it now. Right.
Ways to cultivate community too, stepping outside of that comfort zone. Or when we think about like anxiety and loneliness, one of the biggest things that comes to mind for me is avoidance. And how much are we avoiding, and how does that help us in the long term? It typically doesn't. So instead of avoiding, put yourself out there, do something that makes you a little bit uncomfortable. It's like that saying, high risk, high reward.
Yes.
Of course, nothing risky.
Yes. Love it.
This conversation has brought me just a lot of warmth inside. I think the heater's on in here too, but I do feel like, and I'm drinking tea, but I think it's the conversation that's keeping me warm. I'm not going to say it's the tea or the heater. But I think it's really great. It makes me feel like I should have a mental health corner every week on the banquet hall, because it just feels nice to have these conversations. And it's why I love podcasting, because sometimes we just need that audible voice to give us permission to set that boundary, give us permission to feel these ways, give us validation and some of the things that we're experiencing in our daily lives. And I know y'all mentioned Kaiser got the LA Times, but y'all got the Banquet Hall podcast, and Kaiser don't got that.
So important. Yes. This is the realness.
But I know that we're coming up on time, so I just wanted to, before we close out the episode, turn it over to you all if there is any last things that you all want to say, whether it's related to the strike, mental health, the holidays, anything from our conversation that you want to leave our listeners with. I typically end these episodes with some type of takeaway from the conversation. So what do you hope our listeners are taking with them from this episode?
One thing that I have said time and time again is that definitely when it comes to mental health spaces, it forever has been and always will be political. And I hope that anyone that's listening, especially people that have thought about seeking care, or if you're a Kaiser member, you've been denied care, that you know that there are people out there fighting for you. We genuinely do care.
Absolutely. Yes. I guess I want to leave with a message. Yeah, I like that for our patients, but also just a message for our members that we're on strike with, right? I know it's hard. I know it's scary. I know it's taxing. But I couldn't be more proud of our strike line and everybody that shows up every single day. The energy, the energy has not changed. Like Monique said, we're tired as heck, right? But like the energy and the loudness has not changed from day one. I think we're getting louder. The numbers aren't, changing either. So like, look around when you do feel like hopeless or what's going to happen, look around at the other members that are out there and just see we're all here fighting for the same thing. We got you. But yeah, I just want them to know that I'm so proud of everybody out there. And then just the community to please, know we are fighting for our patients. We're fighting for the greater good of, our workforce as well. but there is a reason we're out here. It's not just money. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's been clear just from our conversation that money, not that it's the last thing on the mind, but so much of this conversation has been patient focused, very human centered, equity focused. So want people to leave with that note that this is about equity. This is about patient care. This is about humanity at the end of the day. Before I close this out, can one of you please share again, how can people support monetarily with the strike, or where can they go to find more information? I'll have the links in the description, but just in case someone's in their 9 to 5 commute and can't look at the description right now, y'all mind saying it one more time?
So if you go, you can just Google, actually, it's called, if you put in Google, NUHW Psych Social, that'll come up in Google, and you click on it. That first page that comes up, if you scroll down, there's a bunch of tabs. A lot of them are for us, like the strikers, but there's stuff on there that says if you want to donate, and it'll take you right to, there's two locations to donate. One of them will take you to our GoFundMe that Monique was talking about. The other one, sometimes people don't feel comfortable doing GoFundMe. There's another link on there that specifically they're donating to NUHW. It's just another fund. Both go to the same place, but they can find the information there. Monique's also going to share that with you as well. So.
Thank you.
And I know
very
that
much.
we have had a couple of people that have asked if I don't feel comfortable doing electronic donations. I can't remember when it came to check donations. How did we handle that?
I think that one might be, that's a good question. Because I think if they go, I know they don't like electronic, but the one that goes directly to NUHW versus like the GoFundMe, I think there might be a place for them to put in like the check information. But I don't know, that we will get back to you guys on that. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that just goes back to staying up to date on social media, checking websites, following along just to continue to amplify those messages and just continue to have this collective conversation, this collective knowledge, and just really keeping y'all in our thoughts and prayers out there on the front line. I want to thank you both for your time this evening and sharing your story and sharing these anecdotes and sharing tips with the guests at the banquet hall. Listeners, I hope y'all enjoyed this episode and that y'all take the time right now, one, to check on that person that came to mind when we were mentioning people to check on. You're listening and so you're like, dang, I haven't heard from so-and-so. That's exactly who you should send that text message to or do that phone call right now. But secondly, or even in addition to check on that person, check on don't send a link to the episode in that text message. Send it to a different person because then they're going to think you just promoted my podcast. So check on your one person, but then send this podcast to at least another person. Jessica, Monique, you both have been fantastic guests. Wishing y'all the best and thank y'all for stopping by the banquet hall.
Thank you. Thank you for having us on and letting us use your platform to get this information out there. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.